I went to open the door, but it was locked, so I took out the key and was shocked to see my wife, Bob, and Sandy sitting in the living room, with Sandy sitting on my couch and holding Deb's hand, Bob pulling up his pants, and my lovely wife lying down. When I opened the door, everyone flinched, with Bob looking half drunk and smiling, and Sandy looking half scared. The majority of people's lives have altered since the internet was created. It reached the point where nearly every person I knew desired a computer. We made the decision to purchase a computer a few years ago, finally joining the computer generation. It was the new toy in the house at first. My wife Deb used it for games and email. Kyle and Kayla, the children, used it for homework and gameplay. However, I utilized it for pornographic and internet searches. I used to work the second shift and leave the factory around midnight, so I would frequently stay late at work. Since I was married, I didn't want to go out to bars like many other males did. I always went home as a result. I would take a seat at the computer, and everyone would already be asleep. The same old became monotonous after a while. Unlike many others, I never truly got hooked. I visited story websites and perused tales pertaining to every conceivable topic. A large portion of what I read shocked me. Are these actions carried out by real individuals, or are they only fantasies? The tales of infidelity among spouses captivated me. These women were all having extramarital affairs. Though it's hard to accept, it raised some interesting ideas. I was now observing my wife's behavior in a way. I used to criticize her for dancing too close to the partner or being overly friendly to other males when we went on dates. We quarreled over it as well. Although I was aware of her stunning looks, I had no cause to mistrust her. I caught myself looking through our emails or the clothing hamper. What comes to mind after reading these stories is so ridiculous. Though I was reading less and less, a lot of ideas were still there. I've read stories of husbands who found their spouses with someone else and just stood there, staring at them. I had to ask myself, does seeing your partner with another man truly make you feel attracted to them? I kept thinking about it, and I didn't think it could make me feel attracted to someone because of my envy. When I told Deb about these ideas, she questioned me about why I was even considering them. She just desired me out of all the men. Deb and I first connected in our 20s. It happened at her sister's nuptials. After we danced, we grew close to one another. I told her what factory I worked at, and she told me she was a school teacher. After a year or so of dating, we were married. We welcomed Kyle into the world the next year, and Kayla 2 years later. Sandy, Deb's sister, was a crazy girl I met in high school years ago. She wasn't real, but we didn't date. Guess I better not mention anything or I too will be taken into consideration. I used to be very wild as well. I know that she had sex with almost anyone. She was with almost all of the guys on our soccer squad. After one of her games, I took part in a threesome. She did it more than once, and no one forced her. She had on-demand sex with nearly everyone, including with one of her girlfriends. Bob, her spouse, was someone I worked with. He was a supervisor on the day shift. Since then, he'd been moved to a different plant. He was every bit as crazy as Sandy. I received an invitation to their wedding from him. I knew what kind of man Bob was, therefore I wasn't too fond of him. When I discovered that he was pursuing Deb after our wedding, my opinion of him decreased even further. She informed me that because he was our brother-in-law, she felt he was simply being courteous, but I knew otherwise. I warned her that I would kick his ass if he attempted to harm her in any way. She advised me to settle down. She was exclusively mine. Since we were both rather jealous of each other, we decided to never discuss our previous relationships. She'd mentioned having sex with a guy, and I didn't want to go on a date with him someday. Furthermore, I had no desire to tell her that I had slept with her sister. Deb and I got along very well in school, except from the occasional fight when Kyle was 8 and Kayla was 6. Because we had different shifts, we didn't get to see each other very often. She was alone with the children at night, while I was alone during the day. Though it wasn't ideal for a marriage, things were as they were. Deb asked me if I could come over to her sister's house and fix the plumbing one day while I was getting ready for work. Bob was no handyman at all, and her kitchen sink was leaking. She instantly corrected me, saying, "The plumbing is at the sink, not my sister's. If you ever try to fix it, you'll regret it." I promised Deb that I would stop by on my way to work and fix everything, to which I chuckled. She kissed me before I went inside, and she and the kids left for school. I was unable to resist thinking of Sandy. They were definitely swingers, I surmised from what Bob had told me. Sandy had always claimed having children would ruin her figure, so they chose not to have any. Her figure wasn't horrible, but it wasn't any better than Deb's, and Deb had 2 children. Sandy tried to make out with me all the time. I tried my best to simply make small talk with her. She wasn't worth losing your marriage for, even though she didn't look horrible. She told me once that it will happen eventually. Sandy worked as a part-time cashier in a nearby supermarket. She understood it was her day off. I was on my way to do some plumbing work. She was dressed sensually in a bathrobe when I got there. After a few minutes of conversation and the offer of a cup of coffee, she showed me the sink. I discovered it was just plugged. Her spouse could likely fix it once I took everything out from under the sink to clear the siphon. Most likely he didn't even attempt. I reclined onto my back, placing my head behind the cabinet, and replaced the siphon. Her excessive use of potato peels and eggshells in the garbage disposal caused the drain to become clogged. While I was reassembling things, she got up and rested on my lap. "Sandy, what are you doing?" "Sandy, I want you to stop," I said. "I'm trying to finish this task." After a brief time of her retreat, I completed the assembly of the pipes, and Sandy questioned, "Are you going to sleep with me now?" "No, Sandy. That's not something I can do. I adore Deb, and she is your sister. I promise not to cheat on her, not with her sister, anyway. Do you no longer remember high school? Sandy, are you too good to share a bed with me now? Please, Deb, I adore you. You would have to tell her about our past together for her to know. I adore Deb, but you're a lovely woman too. You foolish, foolish man. I'll tell Deb you did it even if you didn't sleep with me. After all, I'm her sister, so she will believe me. Why did you act in this way? Why cause us harm? Deb loves you and is your sister," Sandy chuckled. "My little prick believes she's everything." Sandy went on, "Let's see how she responds when I tell her about it." "Don't do this, Sandy. I'll tell Deb how we got along in school and I won't have sex with you." My mind was racing, wondering if Sandy would fabricate a tale and lie to Deb, but I jumped in my truck and raced to work, telling her I was done with her stupid sink. "I know she'll understand," I added, grabbing my tools. "Deb, I love you and I have something to tell you about your sister." I left her a message when I called her after getting to work, but she wasn't home yet. When I returned home this evening, I started work and got down to business, finding it difficult to focus with everything racing through my mind. It was beginning to seem like any other day, but now it was all jumbled up. At some point around 6 o'clock, I called home again and received no response. I then contacted Deb's mother and asked if she knew where Deb was. She departed with Bob and Sandy. The children were with me. Deb asked if I could stay with them while they went for a couple of hours. I promised to leave them for the night. Their being here is nice to me. "Bree, is something not right?" "May I ask?" she inquired. "No, it's not a problem. Tell her I love her if you see her, and I'll see her tonight." "I have to return to my work," I answered. It was one of the longest nights of my life, for me anyway. I knew I had to tell Deb about her and me. Hell, I knew that before I'd even met Deb, I'm sure she would have understood. When the day finally came to an end, I drove home and pulled up in front of Sandy's house, where I recognized her car. Apparently, it was time to face reality. I went to open the door, but it was locked, so I took out the key and was shocked to see my wife, Bob, and Sandy sitting in the living room, with Sandy sitting on my couch and holding Deb's hand, Bob pulling up his pants, and my lovely wife lying down. When I opened the door, everyone flinched, with Bob looking half drunk and smiling, and Sandy looking half scared. I was so angry that I ran up to Bob and hit him as hard as I could, knocking him to the ground. I didn't know if it was Deb or Sandy screaming behind me, so I hit Bob probably 5 times before I felt a blow to the back of my head. Now that I had to face reality, I don't know about the guys and the stories I read, but I didn't have a boner. I was in the hospital when I woke up, and I noticed a man in a uniform who I assumed was a city police officer. "You're back in the world, I see. Patrolman G. Andrews is who I am. And precisely where I am, and where's my spouse? What transpired with me?" I inquired. "Go more slowly, Mr. Harper. You were struck on the head by a glass vase and now have a concussion. It appears like you got into a quarrel at home, and someone phoned the cops. You were supposed to face assault charges, but those were later dropped. You were quite fortunate. You might have spent an entire 18 months behind bars. What about the assault I suffered? You mentioned that I was struck in the head. Witnesses claim that once you got home, you got into a confrontation with your brother-in-law. His wife struck you over the head with a vase to get you to stop. The only time you were hit was to break up the brawl. You ought to express gratitude to them for resolving your legal issues. When you entered, where was my wife? Your wife had vomited when we got there. You became enraged with your sister-in-law when she claimed to have consumed too much alcohol. You started fighting with your son-in-law when he stopped you as you were going towards her. He was merely attempting self-defense. Your wife told us she doesn't remember anything other than that you were yelling at her when we spoke with her. Why are you here if the accusations are dropped? When you weren't home yet, my boss contacted and instructed me to hold off on getting your statement. What then transpired? I am at a loss for words. I had proof that my wife was having an affair, but I wasn't going to break the news to everyone. I remained motionless and silent. I laid there with a severe headache as the officer said, "All right, have it your way. According to the doctor, you will have to stay here until tomorrow. I suggest you think about what you've done and thank God that no charges have been filed. You are a very lucky man, Mr. Harper." What action would I take next? I had to find out why my wife was cheating, even though I knew I couldn't live with her. To have me picked up, I called my sister. I didn't want Debbie to come collect me the next morning because I had no method of getting home. The phone rang as I was waiting on my sister Amy to show up. Deb was the one. Deb said, "We need to talk." "Do you want me to come get you? Now that we're even? Even what the hell are you talking about? You slept with Bob, and you're saying we're even? Amy's coming to get me. I just want to pick up a few of my things, and I'm leaving." "What do you mean, leave?" "I was just getting even with you for what you did," Deb responded. I hung up and waited for Amy, saying, "I'm not going to talk about it over the phone. Amy and I will come get my stuff, and we'll talk then." After a little while, she arrived, and we made our way to my place. Amy was told to wait in the car by me. She liked Deb, I knew that, and I didn't want her involved in any drama. Deb answered the door when I knocked. She replied that the children were still at her mother's when I inquired where they were. I was the first to speak. "Did you get my message?" "Yes, and Sandy told me how you forced her to have sex." "How could you do that?" She wept gently. "I didn't do anything like that. That's why I left the message. I went over to Sandy's house and fixed her plumbing. She started hitting on me. I told her no, but she kept insisting on doing it. She told me that she would tell you that she had sex with me, even though she didn't. I don't believe you, you're lying. Why would my sister lie to me? She's jealous of our marriage, she wanted to see if she could keep us apart, and she seems to have succeeded. Why do you think she sat back and let Bob have sex with you? They are swingers and wanted to get you into it. Looks like they both got what they wanted. You let Bob have sex with you, and our marriage died." "No, that's not true. I did it to get even with you. You raped my sister, and I had sex with Bob to get even with you. Sandy even knew you weren't circumcised and that you had a mole on your upper thigh. Your sister is a liar. She knew that because I slept with her in high school, like every other guy. I never told you because I had a crush on you and didn't want to lose you. Then you said we would never talk about our past relationship, so I left it all in the past. I don't know what to believe. Sandy is my sister, and I'm your husband. You didn't even wait to ask or call me about it. Instead, you let Bob do it. Do you really think it would have solved the problem if I had raped your sister? You must have wanted him very badly to let them talk you into it. But Sandy said, I don't care what your sister said. This isn't just about Bob, it's about you not respecting me and not trusting me to at least listen to the accusations against me. If I raped her, why didn't she call the police? She said she didn't want to hurt me with a family scandal. She had no problem hitting me over the head and calling the police last night. She didn't yell rape because it didn't happen. You can believe whoever you want, but this marriage is over. Why would you want to live with a rapist? No, you wanted Bob, and you used me for an excuse. No, that's not true. I love you. You better look up the word love, it doesn't include sex with other men. I'll pick up a few of my things and come back next week for other things. While you're gone, I'll go to the lawyer first thing Monday and start filing for divorce. Ray, wait, this isn't how it was supposed to happen. Sandy said she forgave you, and you would forgive me. I just wanted to get even with you. No, you just had sex with Bob and your sister. I went and got my suitcase, putting a few personal items in it. What do I tell the kids? Tell them whatever you want, I don't care. I don't want to see you anymore. I'll get a lawyer to arrange visits, and Amy can take the kids so I can see them. I don't ever want to talk to you again. I opened the door and got out. Amy took me to a budget motel while I looked for somewhere else to stay. I told my best friend and sister, Amy, the entire tale while we were traveling to the motel. I knew she would assist in watching Deb and the kids, and she knew that I was telling the truth. It was really difficult for me, and weeks passed. I put in extra hours since I had more bills to pay. I leased a budget guest house for a week after finding it. I ate most of my meals at corner diners or bars. I saw a lawyer, and since I had no documentation, I just requested that our marriage be dissolved. Debbie didn't want it, he told me, but she would do anything I asked. Everything was divided about equally. She simply took over the rent payments for the house we rented. We divided our savings in half, and she had to give me half of our belongings worth. I didn't mind at all that I had to pay child support. I adore my kids and am sorely missing them. The issue was that, although I knew our relationship was finished, I missed Debbie too. In an effort to avoid interfering with my work, I attended every school event I could. I attended the birthday parties of both our kids as long as I could avoid being with Debbie's relatives. Deb and I had a cordial discussion, but I would always leave when she wanted to talk about us. Every weekend, and often during the week as well, depending on my work schedule, I spent time with my kids. Deb most likely gave me a call nearly every day until the divorce. I listened to her if she wanted to chat about the kids or housework. I hung up when she wanted to chat about us. I played with the kids when I went over to my sister's place for dinner one day. Amy informed me that Sandy was still clinging to her claim that I made her have sex. She informed me that Deb was conflicted over what I said and what Sandy said. I attempted to clarify to Amy that Sandy and I lacked evidence. Debbie trusted her even though it was simply my word against hers. That caused the most pain. The phone rang one day while I was at home. The school was the culprit. They asked me to pick up Kyle since they said he wasn't feeling well. Naturally, I consented and proceeded to retrieve him. He coughed and had a cold. I called Debbie, who was a middle school teacher, to let her know that I would be bringing up Kyle. As soon as she could, she promised to return home. I took Kyle's temperature after getting him home and placing him on the bed. He was slightly feverish, but not sickly. Deb and Kyle arrived home after around 60 minutes. She hurried inside to check on Kyle's condition. The phone rang as she entered to see him. I answered the phone out of habit without thinking. Sandy was the one. She questioned, "What are you doing there?" Well, if it isn't a liar. Kyle was sick, and I brought him home. Don't worry, you ruined the marriage. I reached down and hit the record button on the answering machine. It was the kind that recorded both sides of the conversation. Is he all right? What makes you concerned? You tore his parents apart. What makes you concerned about him? Ray, things has got out of control. Look at me. Bob wanted to sample my younger sister, and you were aware that we were swingers. It would never have gone out of control if you had acted on my request to have sex. However, you returned home and got into a quarrel. You made Bob rape Deb after you told Deb I had raped her. Are you some kind of fucking sister? She freely offered herself to Bob. He never sexually assaulted her. Hell, if Bob tried again, she probably would have agreed to it. You made her believe all of that while she was intoxicated, then you watched while your spouse took care of her. And that's the thing, Ray, you can't prove it. You now know that I was right when I said that she would believe me over you. Give me a call if you need to get laid. Deb should give me a call later. She ended the call, saying, I hope my nephew feels better. I turned off the recorder. I reassured Debbie, your wonderful angel is a sister who will never lie to you, when she questioned who had called. What was it she desired? I recorded her message, and she said to call her back. Well, Thursday I'll see you in court. Let's just say it's a day of freedom. I said, remember to pay attention to the message, and made my way to my pickup. My phone began ringing after 5 minutes or so. I'd estimate that it contacted me 10 times before I made it home. Once at home, the phone continued ringing until I answered it. I apologize, Ray. I really apologize. Pardon me, please. Sandy told me the truth about not being raped when we just spoke. That's encouraging to hear, but it doesn't alter my viewpoint in any way. After I told you the truth, you slept with Bob without even giving me an opportunity to explain. You nevertheless decided to believe your sister's tale. I committed rapes. One thing I want you to know is that even though I despise you for what you did to our family and the mistrust you had toward me, I still loved you and probably always will. I took a 2-day break from work on Thursday. I went to the office of my lawyer and put my signature on the divorce petition. I wanted out before Deb got here. I was walking to the local tavern, feeling really down. As I was getting my beverages ready, I noticed Bob enter the room. I moved up to him and delivered him a frigid punch, but he didn't see me. I repeatedly struck him after he fell. I stood up and proceeded to kick him till he was reduced to a mass on the ground. I leaned over to give him another kick, but 3 people grabbed me and kept me from him. I hope you die in hell, I distinctly recalled saying, and I kicked him until I was pulled away. I was handcuffed by the police, who then tossed me to the ground and led me to the patrol car. I was brought to prison this time. I called my sister Amy since I was only allowed to make 1 phone call. I informed her of my actions, assured her that I would complete my sentence and that she didn't need to post bail since it would be too costly. When I hung up, she started crying. Debbie visited me at the prison, but I wouldn't let her in. Before my case was heard in court, it took about 2 months. After being accused of assault, I entered a guilty plea. I received 2 years, deducted for time spent. I requested Amy to move my small collection of possessions down the basement. She informed me that Debbie wanted to see me because she was feeling so sick. I expressed to her my desire not to see her. Deb genuinely loves you, even though I know you don't want to hear this. In addition to Sandy's harsh criticism of you, you should be aware that Debbie failed to appear to sign the divorce agreement, meaning you will be imprisoned as a married man. You don't want to live in prison, which is where I was incarcerated. It resembled a different planet. I constantly got into arguments and had to prove myself to practically all of the groups. Nobody used me as a scapegoat. Killer was a lifer who shared my cell. I believe he destroyed them both after witnessing his wife having fun with another man one day when he returned home. The documents state that Keeler stabbed them almost 80 times. It was difficult to identify him. He had killed another prisoner the previous year when the latter had begun fighting with him. I made an effort to hang on as long as I could, but the other inmates kept asking me questions. I had 2 trips to the infirmary in the first 2 months due to cuts. There were virtually always fights. I guess I paid my respects, because I wasn't bothered as much after that. Furthermore, on Visitor's Day, Killer even struck up a conversation with me. I made the decision to visit my guest. I assumed it would be my dad or Amy, but Debbie was the one. "Why are you in this place? May I ask?" I said. She had a lovely, radiant appearance. I was being angry, Ray, even though I wanted to hug her. "I've made a lot of mistakes, but I love you." Tears ran down her face. "I brought you some pictures from the kids. They miss you very much, and so do I. Look, my life has changed since then." She handed me some baby photographs and said, "Just take care of my kids and tell them I love them." They looked adorable in these, which were their final school photos. "Ray, the divorce papers are not mine to sign. I'll be here waiting for you. How long it takes is irrelevant to me. I know we can overcome this if you still love me, even though I made a horrible, horrible mistake." I was at a loss for words. Naturally, I still felt affection for her. I just detested what she had done and her lack of faith in me. I rose and made my way back to my cell. I walked away from her, disappearing behind the glass. While I was doing some work in the kitchen, I heard someone talking about how a person was pursuing Killer for killing his friend. The following evening, they planned to attempt to corner him in the dining room. I couldn't disclose it to anyone without coming across as a snitch. I chose to inform Killer. That would include me in his group. I couldn't let this man die, even if I didn't want to belong to any group. Killer wasn't sure if he should believe me the following day. I advised him to follow his own beliefs. I spoke with him instead of the guards. I suppose that was a gamble. Killer gave me a direct glance. "A person's eyes can reveal a great deal about them," he remarked. He warned me not to approach him. He would take charge of the problem the following day to ensure that no one would find out that I had told him about it. I was in shock at what he'd done. He covered his kidneys with two thin hardback books that he tucked under his shirt. 3 of his friends were seated at a different table behind him. Naturally, Keeler hit the book even though the prisoner moved up behind him and straddled his chest, causing him to stab himself in the kidneys. Generally speaking, knives were rather dull, they just penetrated the skin, not the book. The prisoner was taken by the killer's friends, who then began beating him until the guards arrived at the table. After the prisoner was placed in solitary confinement, Keeler took a seat once more to consume his food. I find it unbelievable that he handled the situation so composedly. Keeler spoke with me rather regularly after that day. He was a totally different person when we spoke in the cell than when we weren't. He was the leader of his group and was as tough as could be when he wasn't in the cell. He inquired about Debbie and the kids from me. He informed me he had 3 adult children, but since he killed their mother, they naturally never visited him. Angie, his youngest daughter, was allegedly on his side since she understood that her mother was to blame for the issues inside the family. She continued to write to him on a regular basis, but he would not let her visit. He didn't want her to be seen by other prisoners and maybe put in danger. He grinned when he informed me his daughter was a lawyer, and I could tell he genuinely loved her. I told him the whole pitiful tale of how Sandy had both set Debbie and me up. Keeler said, "Do you still love her?" to me. "Yes, I think so, but at the same time, I hate what she did to our family." "Does she still love you?" "She says she loves me, but I can't forgive her." "Why not?" "Look where you are now. You've hit rock bottom, kid. If there was a woman in the world who loved me and said she'd wait for me, I'd be the happiest man in the world. What about mistrusting me, not trusting me, and having sex with another man? Hell, you killed a man and your wife for the same thing. And I regret it every day of my life. I regret not giving her a second chance and getting my family back. Don't get me wrong, Ray. Don't hold a grudge, it will kill you, ever so slowly." He gave me something to reflect about. Is he correct? When I got out, how would I respond? I didn't have a family at the moment, a career, or a future. The following month, I received another guest. Debbie returned. With tears in her eyes, she gave me a grin. She placed the drawings on the tray and said, "The kids drew you some more pictures," which I looked at. An image of Dad, Mom, and the 2 children was displayed. The kids must still think of us as a family. They miss you, Ray. God, I miss you. Will you ever be able to forgive me, and can we be a family again? I promise I'll do whatever it takes. I don't talk to Sandy or Bob anymore after what she did to us. I'm sorry for not trusting you. I thought you didn't believe me once, so the next time someone says something, she'll probably believe them again instead of me, Deb. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to forgive you, but I don't know if I can. Seeing you with Bob, I can't get it out of my head. Did you really like him? No, I hated it. That's why I threw up when you walked in. I saw the look on your face, and I felt sick. I realized what I did was wrong when I saw you. Of course, I could never take it all back. God, I wish I could. I never would have done it if I hadn't been so drunk. I only want one man, and that's you, Ray, the father of our 2 children. A few weeks afterward, I received another guest. Amy paid me a visit. Ray, remember when I told you that Deb had stopped seeing Sandy? I was driving by the house and saw Sandy and Bob going into the house. I don't know why they were there, so I kept driving. I just thought you should know. Once more, I was perplexed. Had Deb deceived me once more? I was prepared to put my past behind her and try to mend our relationship. Amy wouldn't lie to me, I know that. I needed to know why Deb was back with Bob and Susan. When Keeler and I spoke about a month later, he expressed that he felt obligated to repay me for all that I had done for him. He claimed to have contacts because he practiced law before going to prison. He planned to investigate the possibility of removing me from the parole program. He never lied to me, but I wasn't sure if I should believe him. I respected Keeler, which may sound odd coming from someone who has committed crimes. I used to think about what a great lawyer he must have been. His demeanor and height were worthy of admiration. I accepted his statement at face value, knowing it would be better to avoid raising any doubts. A few weeks later, the parole board was meeting in the warden's office, and I was called to attend. Mr. Harper, the jail governor, was the first to speak. We have a parole application for you. I don't know who you're familiar with, but we've been asked to speak with you. After reviewing your file, we saw that you had a hard time adjusting for the first few months. Is that true? He inquired. I suppose I wasn't meant for life behind bars, but I made an effort to adjust. I knew this was a make-or-break question, so I had to think quickly. If you had gotten out earlier, where would you have lived and how would you have survived? I said. Well, sir, I have a sister who is also my best friend. She and her husband said that when I get released, I can live with them until I get back on my feet. Aren't you married, Mr. Harper? Yes, sir, but we were in the process of divorcing when I was sentenced. At this point, I'm not sure how things are going to work out with him. I'm just trying to be honest with you. We thank you for your honesty. We knew you had broken up, and we wanted to see how honest you were with us. Sir, as for the job, my previous employer said I was a good worker and to come to him when I was released. What are your chances of going back to prison? We don't look our best when a convict we released early goes back in. I promise you, sir, that I never want to see those prison walls again. Go back to your cell, Mr. Harper, and we'll get back to you by the end of the month. Yes, sir, and thank you for at least considering me for parole. When I returned to the cell, Keeler inquired about my experience. I questioned him whether he had anything to do with it after telling him what I had informed the lawyer. You never know, but if you're released early, I'll expect a box of cigarettes a week to be put on my account, he said. A few days later, he returned and reported that there was a parole board member inside the residence. She inquired, "Are you going to be paroled?" I cautiously questioned, "What did they say? What did they want? How are we settling in, and will you be able to live there?" I told them we broke up, but I'd love to have you back, she replied with apprehension. I changed the subject. You told me you stopped seeing Sandy. Have you been seeing her? She's my sister. I don't see her that often. I interrupted. And Bob, have you seen him lately? Why are you asking me these questions? She was uneasy. You can't be trusted. You said you wouldn't see Sandy, but she and Bob were in the house. Did something happen with you and Bob again? Is that why you're worried about parole? Tell your damn lover Bob that when I get out, I'll finish work, and if you're having fun with him in the meantime, I'll take care of you too. Deb got up and fled the visitors area. I knew what I was thinking. I was prepared to return to the same terrible circumstance that had initially led me to this spot. I merely intended to give them a nice scare, nothing more. I had no intention of killing anyone. After I called my sister Amy, she dropped by to say hello. When I told her about the chat with Deb, she expressed her sympathy for me. She added that when the parole board visited her, she told them that I could remain in this place for as long as I required. Kenny, her husband, was present and said I was welcome. Do you know if they called Mr. Parker about my job? Yes, that's right, and he said you could go back to your old job. You were one of the best workers. Gosh, Amy, you've given me hope. I hope I don't get rejected. It won't. They told me that since you have a place to live and a job, you'll probably be released at the first of the month. She started crying. Amy was accurate. Someone called to tell me I was getting out next week. I was informed of the name of the attorney that would be representing me. The agency was to get my report as soon as I was released. Why I was supposed to meet with an attorney instead of a parole officer was beyond me. I was informed that my release was handled by the legal firm. After our meeting, they were to complete out my paperwork, explain my parole status, and send me to a parole officer. Keeler reminded me about the cigarettes after I thanked him. I informed him of their arrival. To be honest, I'm not sure if his involvement with my parole was significant, but being free was worth a box of smokes every week. My sister Amy was crying when I stepped beyond the gate. I gave her a big hug and a kiss fit for a brother. Welcome back, brother. When I arrived at Amy's place, her husband welcomed me. That's when I understood I was extremely welcome there. Naturally, I inquired about Debbie, and Amy informed me that she had spoken with a lawyer and executed the documents to officially end the marriage. It appears that my assessment of Deb was accurate, but now I had my freedom. I realized that in order to see the kids, I needed to schedule a visit with Deb at her place. To make sure she was home, I gave her a call first. I did not want any major setbacks or to go back to prison. I made an effort to convince her that my visit wasn't intended to start a fight. We could sit on the porch and speak. All I wanted to do was arrange to visit the children on a daily basis. She consented to visit me but threatened to call the police if I continued to cause trouble. My kids hurried up to me as soon as I drew up to the home, yelling, "Daddy! Daddy, you're back!" I embraced them. God, I really did miss them. After a brief conversation with them, I told them to go ride their bikes, and my mother and I would watch from the porch. "What do you want, Ree? You've made it clear that we're never going to be a family again. We're moving on with our lives, Debbie. These are my children too, and I want them to be a part of my life. I was ready to forgive you, but you lied to me again. You just had to go back to Bob and Sandy. I know what kind of people they are and who they socialize with. Ree, you were in prison, and I was lonely. Don't mess with my head. I know you slept together. I don't care who you're having fun with. Shove goddamn Bob up your ass if you haven't already. I'm here to tell you that if I find out that my children are subjected to this perverted lifestyle, I will do everything in my power to take them away from you. Do you understand? This is not just an empty threat. My children mean a lot to me, and I want them to have a good life. Ree, I would never do anything to hurt my children. Already you ruined our family because of damned Bob. I'm going to make sure my kids stay away from people like that. Tomorrow, I will meet with my new lawyer and find out what my rights are. I don't trust or believe you anymore. You showed me your true colors. I left you, but we have 2 children, and I will make sure they grow up in a good environment. I promise you, Ree, I won't get sucked into that lifestyle. Yes, I've tried it. I admit it. But it's not for me or my kids. You'll see I've changed. I don't trust you, and remember, actions speak louder than words. I spoke with my kids about school and their activities when they came over. I informed them that although I was now residing at Aunt Amy's, I planned to move closer to them and make more time for them. I bid them farewell with a kiss and a hug before returning to Amy's. I went to the legal practice that was handling my case the following morning. It felt weird to go there. I hadn't even spoken to the attorney who secured my release. I approached the receptionist and produced the card that the parole board had issued me. "May I speak to Mr. A.J. Brady, please? I have an appointment." "I'm Ray Harper," I replied. "Miss Brady will see you shortly." "Please have a seat, Mr. Harper," the receptionist said with a smile on her face. I wondered if she mentioned Miss Brady. I figured it was a mail card as it says A.J. Brady. As I sat there thinking, a stunning woman in a dark blue suit approached me. She had shoulder-length dark brunette hair, dimples, and a smile. She extended her hand to meet me, and I couldn't help but stare at her. She reached out to shake hands and remarked, "Ray Harper, I assume." "I'm A.J. Brady. I know we haven't met yet, but I've been asked to look into your, how shall I put this, situation, and I've come to the conclusion that you didn't have a fair defense. And we'll talk about the rest if you'll step into my office, please. Mary, I don't want to be disturbed. Please take messages to all calls and tell them I will call them back," she told the receptionist. "Yes, Miss Brady," the front desk agent answered. I went into her office after her. I would have followed her into the abyss if she had asked me to. She was a really attractive woman. "Well, Mr. Harper, we meet at last. Please, call me Ray if you don't mind. I owe you my life, and I have no idea why you did it, Mr. Harper. I mean, Ree, a good friend of mine asked me to look into your case. Your lawyer let you plead guilty instead of trying to help you. You had a lot of extenuating circumstances that he never mentioned. You had just signed the divorce papers. The person who caused your divorce came to the place where you were. You were not in your right mind at the time. These and other factors would have gotten you a lesser sentence. Of course, you committed assault, but the sentence was too harsh. I pointed that out to the parole board, and they agreed with me to some extent. I asked, "Why, Miss Brady? Why me? Who asked you to help me? Can I call you anything other than Miss Brady? After all, I feel like you saved my life and gave it back to me." "Look, Ray," she said at first. "You begged me to help, and I obliged. Is knowing who employed me really that important? I suppose you can call me A.J. if you know my name. I got to know a prisoner they dubbed Killer, and we became friends. He promised to assist me in obtaining parole. He also claimed that Angie, a lawyer, was one of his favorite daughters. I pondered whether you were the stunning daughter he was referring to. My new lawyer's eyes sparkled. She looked me in the eye and said, Keeler. I mean, Dave. My father's name is Dave, and he asked me to handle your case. He's never asked me to do that before, so he must have really liked you. I was surprised when he asked, but for my father's sake, I'll do anything. AJ, can I call you Angie? I know we just met, and you're my lawyer, but you're too pretty for me to call you AJ. And I definitely don't want to call you Miss Brady. What does AJ's even mean? Angelina Ju Brady is my name. Now you know why I chose AJ. Listen, Ray, there are a few things we need to discuss. Would you have lunch with me? I replied. I don't meet with clients. It's not a date, it's lunch. I have to go to work in a couple of hours, and I need to eat. If you don't want to call it a date, you can pay for it and call it a business meeting. You do take clients to lunch sometimes, don't you? Angie laughed and showed off her large dimples. No wonder Daddy liked you. Yes, I take clients to lunch. Let me tell Mary we're leaving, and then we can go out to lunch. I watched her get up. She was a pretty pleasant-looking woman. She had beauty and character that you don't frequently find in a lawyer. We went to lunch and into a very pleasant, quiet restaurant. After ordering lunch, she told me about meeting my parole officer. She said he was a pretty decent person, but I would have to follow the rules and stay out of trouble. I was to meet with him twice a month for a few months and then once a month for the rest of the year. Angie, you know everything about me. Will you tell me something about yourself? Ray, I don't think it would be appropriate to talk to you about my personal life. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I love looking at your dimples when you smile. Ray, please. I told you I don't date clients, but thanks for the compliments. She couldn't help but blush. Tell me about your legal education. It's a business, I have a right to know that as a client. She tried to hold back a smile. Okay, Ray. I have a law degree that I got from the university on a scholarship. I've been an attorney for several years now. My specialty is criminal law. We had lunch when it arrived. I was thinking about Angie, I couldn't help it. Will I see you again, Angie? You'll actually have to come back next week to fill out the paperwork you get from your parole officer. Why don't we have lunch again? I'll even buy you a treat. I observed that she had softened somewhat. Okay, but this lunch is just to discuss business. We returned to the office following lunch. I took a moment to hold her hand in both of mine when she extended her hand in farewell. I pondered on her thoughts. I prayed that she didn't consider me to be a freak. At our parting, I told her I was already excited about our lunch the following week. After glancing at her, her secretary grinned. Clients and attorneys don't see one another all that much, I suppose, but most attorneys weren't like Angie. I returned to work, and it was fantastic. I completed my work in a flash. I suppose it's similar to riding a bike in that you just hop on and go. The guys I used to work with were back, for the most part. Nobody was making jokes about me, it was as if they suddenly respected me. I had an appointment with Angie the following 2 Mondays. I wanted to know more about her, but she was attempting to keep the connection strictly business. She informed me that we had terminated our business partnership during the 4th week of our correspondence. My question was, are you still my lawyer? Of course. If you have any problems, all you have to do is call me, she responded. Angie, I'm afraid I have to fire you. I'm very sorry. What? Fire me? What in God's name has gotten into you? I helped you get out of jail and didn't charge you with anything, and you want to fire me? Yeah, you said you weren't going out with your clients, and I want to have a real date with you. I want to take you out to a real dinner and maybe a dance. I want to really get to know you. I know I'm an ex-con and a factory worker, but I want to get to know you better. I think you do too, because for the last 3 weeks, I could have been making phone calls to get the information you asked for. I think you want to see me too, Ree. I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. Yes, I'm a little attracted to you, but this is all about ex-convicts and laborers, isn't it? You don't think we should be together? No, that's not it at all. You're my client, I'm your lawyer. What will people think? Who cares? Just come with me once. If you don't like it, you'll know not to go again. Follow your heart, come with me Saturday night. Look, I know I just got out of jail and I've been locked up for a while. I don't know where this is going, but I want to give it a chance. Oh God, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'll go once. I'll tell you right now, don't try to get me to sleep with you. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that, Angie answered back. That Saturday, we went for a drive. I borrowed a car from my sister. I didn't want to drive Angie in my old truck. She gave me her address, and it was a townhouse. I knocked on her door, and when she answered, I saw the most gorgeous woman. I know that all men see women differently. In my eyes, she looked stunning and beautiful at the same time. I wanted to grab her and hug her right then and there. I knew I had to be a gentleman, but it wasn't easy. We went to a fancy restaurant and ordered wine and then dinner. After dinner, we decided to talk for a while listening to music. Angie, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? You must have been married because your last name is different from your father's. Please, tell me about yourself. You know my life like a book, Ree. My dad and mom didn't get along very well. Of course, you know how that ended. Dad's been in prison for 14 years now. My brother and sister and I were raised by aunts and uncles. I'm the youngest, and I was 14 when all this happened. It was very hard on all of us. My brother and sister have never forgiven my father. They love him, but they just can't forgive him. I knew my mom was cheating on him, and I told him about it. I argued with my mom, but she said I was just a kid and didn't know what I was talking about. She said that someday I would really learn about life. Then I told my dad about it. 2 weeks later, he caught her with another man. I partly blame myself. If I had kept quiet, this might not have happened. Angie, you don't know that. You're not responsible for your mom's death or your dad's imprisonment. They were adults, and you were a child trying to do the right thing. After my father was sent to prison, I decided that I would go to college and try to become a lawyer, and maybe I could help my father get a lighter sentence. That's why I chose criminal law. Of course, there wasn't much room for maneuvering in my father's case. He was a brilliant lawyer himself and told me he was proud of me, but there wasn't much I could do to help him. Have you been married before, or is it none of my business? I said to Angie. Both. It's none of your business, and I wasn't married for long, she added, grinning at me. We got to our feet and I ordered the band to play a couple gentle songs back to back. Ree, can we talk about this some other time? I don't want to ruin this evening. I'm having a good time with you. Would you like to dance? I have 2 left feet, but this will give me a chance to hug you. I embraced Angie and we spun around to dance. I took in the aroma of her hair as I pulled her near to me. Ray, you should know that I don't go on dates very often because of the people I socialize with. I have a pretty big distrust of men. I'm just trying to be honest with you. If my dad hadn't sent you to me, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'll send your father an extra pack of cigarettes. Angie, you're the nicest thing that's ever come my way. I'll do anything to make you trust me. If I step out of line, just tell me, and I'll back off. When I took her home that night, I kissed her at the door. After that, she just stared at me. She leaned forward and kissed me again. Can I come in, Angie? No, Ray, too soon, too soon. Not today. Will we see you again? Say, next Saturday? That might be possible. Call me Thursday. I came home a very happy man. We met the following Saturday and the one after that. She told me more about herself. Ree, I want you to know more about me if we're going to keep dating. Nothing will be kept a secret from you. As I already mentioned, I'm not suited for this. I've already been married. That was my first year at university. Naturally, after deciding we loved each other, my partner and I made love. We chose to tie the knot once I became pregnant. After we appeared before a justice of the peace, he wed us. We were too young to have a successful marriage, as we soon discovered. I lost my pregnancy. After discussing it, my spouse and I decided to file for divorce after realizing our error. My father told me I had to take the Brady last name in order to separate myself from his Miller last name. That was, of course, my previous name. That she had confided in me at last made me very happy. I told her my children wanted to meet her when she inquired about them. After telling them about her, I said that my daughter was persistent in requesting to meet her. We're hosting a family cookout next Saturday, and you're invited. I realized it would be a big step for us if she agreed to come. Angie, would you like to meet my sister and my 2 kids? I said. The first step toward our growing closer was getting to know my family. Her gaze was diverted from me. This was a significant move, and I knew it. She inhaled deeply and met my gaze with hers. She then bent over and planted a kiss on me. It was the first time she had ever given me that kind of kiss. She withdrew and inhaled deeply once more. I had no idea what women did at these kinds of events. Okay, Ray. Count me in. What can I get you? I said I would have Amy give her a call. There were more family members attending the family celebration after I notified Amy about Angie's attendance. The new woman in my life was someone they all wanted to meet. My parents were there, along with a number of cousins, aunts, and uncles. I'll cook potato salad, Angie promised. Amy once told me how lovely Angie's voice sounded when she gave her a call. I believe she was hoping that we would get together. I was aware that it was. Every weekend, I would visit Deb's home to pick up my children. I would either take them to Amy's or take them somewhere else. Their company was enjoyable. I made an effort to always ask them nicely when I inquired about their mother. Their mother was seeing a man, according to Kyle. I was originally concerned about this, but Kayla later informed me that Pat was the teacher. In addition to coaching soccer, he conducted health workshops. I asked Deb about him, and she replied, "I told you I was trying to turn my life around. Pat is a good guy. His wife died of leukemia 2 years ago. He moved here to start over. He has a 15-year-old daughter, and Kyle and Kayla like her. I want to tell you one thing, Deb. Your lies and cheating have ruined our relationship. If you care about this man, treat him right, and above all, be honest with him. Don't mess things up the way you did between us. Pat loves our children and treats them well. He knows about you and realizes that you are their father. I hope everything works out for us. I hope I haven't ruined it for you and all the women. You're a good man, Ree, and I know you'll find the right woman." I drove home. About a mile away from Deb and the children's home, I discovered a little apartment. To provide the kids somewhere to stay when they were with me, I located a 2-bedroom apartment. I still enjoy to visit Amy's, but I usually swing by for food a few times a week. I was nervous when the barbecue day finally arrived. While waiting for Angie to arrive, I stood outdoors. When her automobile arrived, I felt a wonderful sense of relief. She extended a bowl of potato salad and grinned at me. "And you ought to consume some," she beamed at me. Her appearance was stunning. In my opinion, she could not look worse. Being with her made me feel so good. Despite our limited interactions to kissing, I knew I had fallen in love with her. There are some things you just know. All I could hope was that she felt the same way about me. She was my excellent friend, as I presented her to everyone. She grinned and gave them both hugs when I presented her to Mom and Dad. Dad turned to face her and said, "Don't miss her, Ray. We already love her, and we don't even know her." Angie grinned and turned to face me. That struck me as encouraging comments. I introduced her to Amy, and they both gave me a look. "Ray, I met your sister when I was doing interviews for your parole," I said. "Since the topic hasn't come up until now, I didn't tell you. I never thought we would become pals. I vowed to never deceive you. I am telling you this right now for that reason. It was not since parole that Amy and I had spoken until she called to discuss the potato salad. Do you think I should know about anyone else you spoke with?" "Yes, Deb, and of course Bob, and your ex-wife, Sue. I spoke with the witnesses to the bar fight, your boss at work, and the police who detained you, of course, to make sure you would have a job. As your lawyer, I handled everything. We'd never met, so I never thought I'd fall in love with you. I apologize for keeping all of this information from you, but I really shouldn't have. You were my client, and before I could support you, I had to know the truth. Tell me when you're ready for me to leave, please, and I will. Come on, go. All I heard from you was that you were in love with me." I took hold of her, kissed her, hugged her, and brought her to the family. I had to pick up the kids, who were excited to see her, so I promised Angie I will be back in a little while. Kayla approached Angie and introduced herself when I got back. "Hi, I'm Kayla. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? You're really pretty, just like Daddy said." "Hi, Kayla, you can call me Angie or AJ. You're a very pretty girl." "It's really nice to meet you," Angie replied. I noticed Kyle shaking Angie's hand and said, "Come and meet my older brother. He's 10 years old and he's afraid of girls." "Kyle, this is AJ, Daddy's friend." She went to the children's level and knelt down. The three of them were clearly going to become friends based on the way they were conversing. "Pals?" I strolled over to join them. "We like her, Daddy, she's so pretty and sweet," said Kyle, who wasn't usually a chatterbox. Angie simply gave me a smile. It was a lovely cookout, and at the end of the night, Angie and I were chatting when Kyle and Kayla approached us. I tried explaining to Kyle that inquiries such as those ought to be made in private. "Dad, remember how you said we were going to go to the amusement park in 2 weeks? Can Angie come with us? Then when Kayla and I go on the rides, you'll have someone to talk to," I offered. Perhaps Angie didn't enjoy theme parks, or perhaps she had other commitments. He turned to face Angie and expressed his regret. Angie began to giggle and said, "Sorry, Angie, I didn't realize you didn't like amusement parks." "Honey, what your daddy means is that you should ask him those kinds of questions in private, not me. As for amusement parks, I love them and would love to go there if it's okay with your daddy. Maybe you and I can ride the roller coaster together," she said, bending down to speak to Kyle. Needless to say, we all went to the amusement park, where the kids rode every ride. Angie went on the roller coaster with Kyle, honoring their agreement. She went on the Ferris wheel with Kyle as well. Kayla made Angie and I giggle when she told me, "Dad, you have to buy a car instead of your truck because you can't expect Angie to use her car all the time," but she was right. They were driving home. I saw Angie very infrequently over the next few weeks. She was busy in court, and I had a few of weekends off. We had a few phone conversations, but it wasn't the same. We decided to go to Chuck E. Cheese after I picked up the kids one Saturday. It was a kid-oriented pizza shop. Aside from pizza, there were numerous games to choose from that awarded tokens and little prizes. Kayla requested me to allow her to phone Angie and invite her to join us after we had already arrived at the house. I promised to give Angie a call since I didn't want to let her down. "Angie, it's Ray. Kayla asked me to call you. What are you doing tonight?" "Oh hey, Ray. I was going out with some friends." "Why? What's up?" "Nothing, have a good time, Ray." "You said Kayla wanted to ask me something? Please put her on the phone." "It's okay, Angie, yes, Kayla wanted to ask something. Please put Kayla on the phone." I was able to only hear one side of the conversation. "Hey Angie, Dad's going to take Kyle and I to Chuck E. Cheese for pizza and games. We were wondering if you'd like to come with us?" "Yeah, okay, I'll tell him. We miss you too." "Okay, bye." I felt bad for Kayla. "What do you mean, Dad? She said she'd be here in 30 minutes. She told you that she's going to buy a car so she doesn't have to use her automobile all the time." "Yes, Daddy, she said she misses us." Later that night, I took the kids to their mom's house after we got back from a pizza party where Angie's Play Skills won the kids a half-dozen stuffed animals apiece. Angie informed me that it was time for us to spend more time together. We entered my place and took a seat on the sofa. "Angie, you know I love you, don't you? I wouldn't be here now if I was thinking about something else. I want you to make love to me. I've been without a man for a long time. All I want is for you to be kind and considerate. To be made love to is what I want, not to be used." We moved from the couch into the bedroom. We took any action we pleased. I did everything from lick the whipped cream off her belly to massaging her feet. We made love, massaged each other, and spent half the night touching. After making love to her, I felt most at ease when I could embrace her. Cuddling and holding her against me felt so lovely. That had been such a long time ago. She spent the entire night out in the end. I prepared us some French toast because I got up before her. Taking off her bedroom coat, she was wearing one of my t-shirts. Never looked better than that t-shirt. I informed her that even for an early morning, she looked amazing. We sat down to discuss after she quickly showered. "Angie, what's next for us? You know I love you, and my kids love you, and my whole family loves you. What do you want to happen next?" "Ray, I sound like a lawyer. We've only known each other for a few months, and we made love for the first time last night. I know it's only been a few months, but I want you in my life every day. If we haven't made love enough, we can go back to the bedroom and spend all day there." That comment made Angie smile. Angie, I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me? Angie's eyes filled with tears. Ray, just so you know, I don't take love lightly. I made a mistake once, like I told you before. Yes, I will marry you. I want you to know that I will always be there for you and the kids. I know what you went through in your first marriage. I will always be honest with you, and I will never cheat on you. I will expect the same from you. She came over to me and gave me a fierce kiss. Honey, what's the matter? You look happy but sad at the same time, she replied. These are my thoughts about my dad and how happy he will be. Most young girls think about that special wedding day, how they will put on a white dress, how their dad will walk them down the aisle and give them to their husband. I know that will never happen to me, and it makes me sad, she said quietly. Last time, my father didn't even know I was getting married. By the time I wrote him, I had miscarried and was on my way to divorce. I'm sorry, Ray, I shouldn't be thinking about this right now. After all, I'm going to marry the man my father approves of and who I was in love with from the first time I met him. What? You loved me from the beginning? She asked me when I wanted to tie the knot, her charming grin returning. I wanted you from the first time I saw you, but I know you knew that, she commented. I said, all arrangements would be made according to her terms. We both decided that the earliest possible time would be. She claimed she would tell everyone, so all we needed was a date, so I asked if I could start telling everyone. Our decision was made to wait 2 months. I was ecstatic for the following few days. I informed Amy and her spouse Kenny about it, and they expressed their happiness for us. I had to inform the children. In order to tell them simultaneously, I contacted their house and had them both connected to the console. Both of them exclaimed how pleased they were and how much they enjoyed Angie. Mary, Angie's secretary, praised me as soon as I entered her office. According to her, Angie had already informed everyone and extended invitations to the wedding reception. I should come in, she said, calling Angie. When I walked in, Angie was there waiting for me. Angie was shedding a few silent tears. What's the matter, Angie? I called the prison, spoke to the warden, and asked him if my dad could get a day's leave to attend our wedding. He told me that my dad is not allowed to leave the prison under any circumstances. His life sentence means just that. He told me it was out of his hands and there was nothing he could do. I'm so sorry, Angie. I know your father's presence means a lot to you. It's getting worse. Dad's cancer, although it was in remission, is now back. He has 3 to 6 months to live, she began to cry. I pulled her to her chest. I thought, why Lord, why did you do this to her? She was a good person, and I was really hurting for her. Angie, I've been buying your father cigarettes since I was released. It was a deal I made with him. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Dad doesn't smoke anymore. He uses the packs of cigarettes people send him to barter with other inmates. You didn't contribute to his cancer. I had an idea, but I didn't want to break Angie's heart by telling her. After giving her a final kiss, I promised to visit her the following day. The following day, I called in sick to the prison to visit Keeler and the warden. Keeler grinned to see me. You take good care of my little girl, Ray. All. I only beg that you bring her joy, as she deserves so much more than she has had in life. When I presented my plan to Keeler, he initially refused, but if I could convince the warden, he eventually agreed. Next, I informed him that I had an appointment with the warden and would see him afterwards. The warden welcomed me. Well, I see you're keeping your cool and getting married. I'm sorry about Keeler, but he's a life prisoner, and we can't let him out for his daughter's wedding. Warden, are you in full control of the prison and can make most decisions about the facilities? What's your point, Ray? Can we get married on the hotel grounds? We can use the chapel, and Keeler can walk his daughter down the aisle. You and Keeler's daughter want to get married here in prison just to have her father around, is that what you're asking? Yes, sir. She hasn't seen her father in over 14 years, and he is dying, as you know. All we ask is to use the chapel to get married. I know that prisoners have been married here before. Okay, Ray, I'll set it up from this side. It doesn't have to be a big celebration. You can only invite 3 outsiders to the prison besides yourself and your fiancée. I'll let Keeler invite a few of his fellow inmates. You will have to use the services of a prison attendant. Thanking the warden, I made my way back to Keeler. I called Dave by name, and he chuckled. The warden agreed with my idea. I'm going back to tell Angie. Thanks, Dave. I know it means a lot to our girl, I responded. Dave said to me, grinning, Ray, write down the number I'm going to give you. For Angie, I jotted it down. When you go to the bank, tell Angie to get her birth certificate. The account is in her maiden name, said Dave. I expressed my regret for Dave's illness and noted the details. Dave answered, all I ask is that you take good care of my little girl. I returned to the office of Angie. What's wrong? She said after noticing my smile. You don't mind getting married in prison? I replied. What? What are you talking about, Ree? I informed her of my chat with the warden and that her father would be permitted to accompany her on her wedding day. She burst into delighted, large tears. She said, God, Ray, I love you. After informing her about the safety deposit box, we went to check its contents. Angie introduced herself to the bank worker as Angelina Juanita Miller and requested to visit her safety deposit box. After Angie provided him her phone number, he examined her birth certificate. After leading us to the safe deposit box, he unlocked it and exited the room. A note from her father caught our attention right away. Dear Angie, if you're opening this box, it means you're either getting married or I've already passed away. I hope it's the former. In the little box is your mother's engagement ring. I know everyone wondered where it went, but I put it here for safekeeping. I want you to have it and wear it with pride. Your mother had her faults, but she loved you, and I know she would want you to have her wedding ring. There are also bonds here totaling over $1,000 that will help pay for your wedding. I formalized them before I was sent away. When you see your brother and sister, tell them there's a box for each of them too. If they haven't gotten theirs yet, only yours has a ring in it. Congratulations, and always be honest with your husband. With love, Daddy. I discussed our wedding with Angie. In addition to my sister Amy, we agreed to invite her brother Brad and sister Lisa if they were able to attend. The reception would be held soon after the ceremony, and we would invite family and friends. For the next month, Angie and Amy worked nonstop to prepare everything for the reception. Due to the impending wedding, extra expenses were required, but I wanted Angie to live out her dream as much as possible. Amy stated she would shoot photos with her digital camera. Angie and I visited the home of her brother and sister. I was introduced to them by her. They informed me they hated their father's actions rather than themselves. Angie gave them the rundown on the wedding and her reasons for being incarcerated during it. When Brad and Lisa heard that their father was dying, tears welled up in their eyes. Angie handed them their bank deposit box information after they consented to attend the wedding. It astonished them that their father had left something for them. Angie and I went to the prison together by car on the day of the wedding. Amy arrived with her spouse, who was waiting for her in the car. I had a costume for Killer, which one of the guards delivered to him when we got to the prison. I was dressed in the rental tuxedo I had acquired for the event. Amy accompanied Angie into the room to assist her with her wedding gown. Angie insisted that I wait to see her until she got inside the chapel. In order to wait for Angie, I entered the chapel. Brad and Lisa entered the room. Brad was to be my best man and Lisa Angie's maid of honor. In the chapel, a tiny piano was being played by an inmate, performing various songs. The guard seated Killer Dave's 5 other cronies who had been brought in by him. Grinning, the warden entered with the priest. He approached me and informed me that cake and punch were served to all attendees following the wedding. He wasn't all that horrible for a warden. As the pianist started to play Here Comes the Bride, everyone got to their feet. Both Angie and her father had tears streaming down their cheeks as they entered the room. Angie's fantasy had come true. On her wedding day, her father would lead her down the aisle. All of them, with the exception of a small wedding party, took their seats as they approached the altar. After entering, another guard shut the door. "Who gives this woman to this man?" declared the priest. Dave confidently said, "Yes, sir," and took a seat. After the priest finished his speech, he said, "Angelina Juanita Miller Brady, do you take Raymond Michael Harper to be your husband?" He then posed the identical query to me. From now on, we made careful to respond with love and reverence. That was our shared emotion. We were never to be separated by anyone. Having endured a challenging existence till then, we were determined to give our marriage our best go. I kissed the bride after exchanging vows. Then she turned to face her father and gave him a hug and kiss. We all walked into an adjacent room to have a brief conversation while enjoying cake and punch that the warden had brought. Reaching their father, Brad and Lisa gave him a hug. It was their first conversation with him in nearly 15 years. There were lots of tears, both happy and regretful. Since they were aware that their father was dying, they wanted him to know how much they still cared for him. Throughout the service, Amy snapped pictures of Angie and myself. Additionally, she tried to capture as many images as she could of Dave and his 3 kids. In the brief time they had together, she caught their embraces, tears, and even a little laughing. After her departure, she and her spouse proceeded to a 24-hour Photoshop where they processed and had some of the pictures enlarged. After bidding the warden and Dave farewell, we expressed our gratitude to him for realizing Angie's desire. Brad and Lisa were still speaking with their father when we walked away. Seeing that sight was very amazing. All the people we invited were there when we returned to the town and arrived to the reception. When we got out of the car, Kyle and Kayla were the first persons we noticed, and they were bouncing around. They rushed to give us hugs. Joyful yells welcomed us as we entered the auditorium. Everybody who greeted us, including my parents, had tears in their eyes. I had never met most of Angie's friends, yet many were there to welcome us. Mary approached and hugged every one of us, and I noticed. Amy arrived with the photos around 30 minutes later. She printed out several of our larger photos so that everyone could see them. Brad, together with his wife and 2 kids, and Lisa, along with her husband and 3 kids, dropped by the house to pick up their family. Dave's photo was approached by both families, who informed the children that this was their grandfather. After the reception, each family will be able to take a set of pictures home, according to Amy, who had shot 4 sets of photos. There was one for Amy, of course, one for Angie and myself, one for Brad and Lisa. I wanted to let you know how amazing Angie looked wearing her wedding gown. She would have resembled an angel that God had sent to me if she had wings. My wife was the most stunning woman I had ever laid eyes on. That's how most guys feel, I believe, about their wives. To the sound of glasses clinking, we danced, ate, and danced some more. For the most part of the evening, our lips were together. Colleagues at work told me I was one lucky guy. I didn't have to tell you that. I wanted to keep the ring with me forever, and I knew I had it. In case you were curious, Pat and Deb were not present for our wedding. I didn't want anything to ruin Angie's day because it was her day. That day will always be remembered by me, as I witnessed her and her father walk down the aisle, her brother and sister reconcile with their father, and the family come together once more. Epilogue: Our wedding day was 6 months ago. Last month, Debbie and Pat tied the knot. Her sincere attempts to sort out her life gave me great satisfaction. My kids tell me Pat is taking good care of them. When I inquire about Aunt Sue and Uncle Bob, my kids inform me that they have moved to a different state. I was transferred to the day shift in order to spend more time with the kids and spend every evening at home with Angie. 3 months after we were married, she became pregnant with our child. The children paid Dave Keeler a visit each month until his death. We could have told him about Angie's pregnancy, even if it was a sad news. We informed him that the baby would be male and that David Raymond would be his name. Dave was grinning at that. I reflect, reliving every moment of it all, the adulterous wife, jail time, meeting the love of my life, and eventually being married to her. I was going to become a father again, and I was starting anew. Every day I give thanks to God for what I have. He gave Angie and me another shot at happiness, and for that I am grateful. I hope you loved it, and that's it. Thank you for watching. In order to see the following video, please subscribe to my channel.